It's afternoon. It is noon. It is time for lunch therapy. It is Interview Friday. And today is no exception. Sometimes there are exceptions, but today we have a live guest. I see Chuck Goldsmith is country road tripping with me. Yeah, we're tripping out today. Today is a healing day. For whatever that means. That means today we're going to spend a little time with some healing music, some healing stories, some fun, and I hope that you all join me on this road to recovery. I see Veronique is here. It's great to see you, Veronique. She gave me some video of wolves eating pumpkins that I still have yet to show on the show because we were wondering, do wolves eat pumpkins? Because all animals do. Turns out they do. So we'll have that probably next week. Country roads, all kinds of roads behind me. We're moving along because we're going out to Joshua Tree today. Our guest isn't from Joshua Tree, but we're kind of Joshua Tree in our mind. So Lunch Therapy is a show for people that haven't been here before, where we attempt to counter the relentless day-to-day crap that has literally plagued us for the past year. We do that by looking at things that are good for our mental health, sharing stories, listening to music, comedy, and often exploring some of the wonders of the world. Today, I have a wonder of the world. His name is Colin Foulke, and he is an incredible person, and we're going to get on to that. And I want to tell you a little bit about how this meeting came to be. At an earlier point in the run of the show, I think it was a Wednesday, we were watching some music, and there were these guys playing this round metal disc, and they called it a hang drum, which is apparently a bit of a misnomer. But ever since that day, I've been like, wow, this stuff is really soothing, and it really makes me feel good. And so sometimes when I feel, crappy, I will listen to people playing this drum, and of course that's a misnomer too. We'll find out about that. It's not a drum at all. But anyway, that day we were watching. Mark Strignell was in the chat room, who's a musician in London. Matt Wright, a musician, and Todd Lee, and I think Jose Salas was there, and we were just kind of vibing to this stuff. The guys tend to have their hair up in a bun when they play it. We were calling them, and I haven't really mastered that yet, but I think it's a thing. So a few weeks ago then, we're doing a show on the biosphere, which is a show that I invite you to check out. And one of our viewers, Pam Palmieri, said, hey, you should check out the Integratron. And I was like, what's the Integratron? Is it some kind of new candy bar, or is it like an amazing juicer? Or is it like the Orgasmatron from Woody Allen's Sleeper, where you get in there and you have an orgasm? I was a little intrigued. Turns out it is more of the latter. It's a place that you go in. You don't necessarily have an orgasm, but you can have all kinds of epiphanies and sound baths and all kinds of stuff. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But let's get into the show. I see comedian Ray Scanlon is here. He is hilarious. You have to check out his channel. Comedian Craze Ray Scanlon, because what he does is he's posting just jokes, lots of jokes on there, and if you want to laugh, that's a good place to go. Joel wants to change the name of our Alexa to Integratron. I hope that Danielle is here. All right, let's move on. Let's get into the show because it's getting snowy.
Yes.
Pursuant now has radar lock on the ground. Current safely on the surface of Mars. Ready.
I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 thought for a moment there it was me freaking out. We talked last week about, or not last week, we talked on Wednesday about the Mars landing of the Perseverance, and that was me freaking out at the landing of the Perseverance. I hope some of you watched that because that was super cool. If you haven't, you can watch it with me on Facebook. I posted that. This behind me is Caitlin Cohen. I figure we should, listen to a little sound bath because I think that will help us get kind of ready for the show. Is Mercury still in retrograde this week? It feels like it. Yeah, it has felt like that. We've had some shows that have been, had some technical difficulties and things, but I want to tell you, today's show is going to be perfect. It's going to go off without a hitch. It is going to be a perfect show. So we're starting out with this calming, and we're going to take our breaths. So in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. This always calms me down. I don't know about y'all, but and having the sound bath at the same time, it's great. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Caitlin Cohen, she has a YouTube channel, so generously let us play her sound bath today. Thank you, Caitlin. No sound. Let's see. It says live. It says live in 7 minutes. Me, you, them. I don't know what that means. Vernus, Mercury's still in retrograde. I think your Mercury is in retrograde. That's what I think. It's called box breathing, it turns out. In through the nose. So, okay, I guess we're box breathing. I'm going to let some air out. And then I'm going to take air in. Hold it. Let it go. Vernus. I guess she probably can't hear this, but if anybody could put in the chat room for Vernus how she can get to the show, because I think she's looking at something different, a different link. But if she goes to joelmarshall.com, she can get all kinds of links. But I'm glad she's here anyway. Probably watching a still photo of me on YouTube. Let's get into this Integratron, okay? So we can get to Colin. So, the Integratron. All right. So here's the story of the Integratron. It is behind me. This is the building, the Integratron. And it was explained to me. I've read up on it, and our guest has been there, so he's going to know much more about it than I am. But I haven't been there, and it's because it's in Joshua Tree, and I've never been to Joshua Tree. I'm afraid of those, those spiny little trees that they have out there. If anybody has never seen that, just check out that YouTube cover, little spiny trees. When I first came to Los Angeles, I was arriving. I saw those trees. I almost turned around because I was like, this is, I don't know, it looks like dangerous territory to me. So I've avoided Joshua Tree completely. Plus, people always tell me, to appreciate it, you have to eat a bunch of mushrooms and trip out. And I'm just afraid of what I would do if I were to do such a thing, because I trip out on portobello mushrooms, So I don't even know what would happen to me if I ingested some mushrooms out there in Joshua Tree with all the spiny trees. It could be a real problem. So in 1947, this guy named George Van Tassel decided it was a good idea to go out near Joshua Tree, and he left his aviation career and he moved to a place called Giant Rock. And he opened this, I don't know what got into him, but he decided, hey, I'm going to open up the Giant Rock interplanetary airport and restaurant. And I think maybe it had to do with some mushrooms. I don't know, but I'm just saying. And then a few years later, a ship came down from Venus. And this being named Solgonda took him onto a ship and, didn't abduct him, just wanted to tell him about this thing called the Integratron. And so Suganda he developed a telepathic connection with him, and they channeled information about this incredible building to George. And they continued this telepathic relationship, and so George decided, like, after a while, he would start an interplanetary convention that he would hold out there, and then he built a little room that was underneath a rock, and they would meditate, and they would do some telepathic things. And then finally, he started building the Integratron. And it looks... Here's George with the Integratron model. And it's kind of an architectural feat, and he did it all on donations. And some of the big donations were from some very, prominent people. And he was able to almost complete it. So like 16 years, he's building this thing. He started this church called the Ministry of Universal Wisdom. And, it became a very, very incredible building. But the thing is, it was supposed to be able to regenerate you. So, like, you could live forever, or you could regenerate limbs, or you could possibly even time travel. So, I don't know. I mean, here it is. According to Van Tassel, this is what it says. The Integratron is located at the intersection of powerful geomagnetic forces that, when focused by the unique geometry of the building, will concentrate and amplify the energy required for cell rejuvenation. This energy is created by the revolution of an external ring at the shoulder of the building, generating electrostatic forces that are fed to the stator centered in the lower room. So apparently the Venusians, that's how they travel through space such long distances, is that they can regenerate their cells. And, I guess George was really convinced, because he, was just building this thing for a while. And he also convinced Howard Hughes to give him money for this thing. So there it is. It's out there for you to enjoy. So there are people now that run it that are just, lovely people. So I was looking around about the Integratron, and I found this, which is kind of an intersection of the handpan, or the hang drum, which we're going to find out is the wrong name for it, and the Integratron. So here it is. So here, this is for your rejuvenation right here. These are some guys playing the handpan in the Integratron. Welcome, Vernus. Thank you all for getting Vernus in the fold. I'm going to have to give her a link where she can always see the live show. This is beautiful. I'm going to try and be quiet so that we can experience this. Isn't that great? I mean, it's like, they should play this in hospitals. That's what I think. You heard it from me. They should play this in hospitals. Okay. I'm going to move on now because I've got Colin here. And Colin not only plays this instrument, but he also makes this instrument. Probably made these instruments right here. We're going to have to ask him. Isn't this great? You can always go to Colin's website to listen to this if you want. But ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Colin Foulke. Yay! There's usually applause here. Yay! Everybody's applauding at home. I know they are.
Hi, Joel.
Hey, Colin. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so lucky. So what happened was I reached out to Colin to say, hey, can I play this awesome music on the show? And Colin was like, of course. And then we started talking, and I started researching about Colin, and I was like, wow, I got to get this guy on the show. And lucky enough, here he
we
is.
are.
It is so great to see you here. Okay, first of all, just to link up with the Integratron, I'm wondering if you could tell us something about that since you've been there.
Yeah. So I've been there, I think 3 or 4 times. And so what happens is there was a handpan specific gathering that happened in Joshua Tree. And it actually happened at this really interesting retreat center that was built. The building was built by Frank Lloyd Wright. And we would go there once a year, 30 to 50 people. And then part of the package of us being there and paying for the event was that they would book 2 hours at the Integratron, which is 20 minutes away from where we were staying. Like you said, it attracts lots of different type of people. The reason that it was attractive to us was specifically the acoustics. It is a building unlike probably anyone in the world. And so its acoustics are fascinating and intriguing. The building itself, it's 2 stories. So when you walk in, there's kind of where you get greeted and you leave your shoes and stuff, and like a little bookstore. And then you go up the stairs on the side of the building, and then you enter the actual dome. And I think what's interesting about the Integratron is it's not spherical. It's kind of oblong, like almost like a 3-dimensional ellipse. So it's kind of egg-shaped. And so that kind of makes the acoustics play around a little different. The most unique thing about the Integratron and its acoustics is that all of the sound that gets generated gets jammed up into the ceiling, and it has this effect where it gets up there and it kind of waterfalls back down into the center. So in the center, there's probably about a 6-foot diameter circle that you literally can kind of stand out of, and you hear stuff, but then you stand in it and you're just slammed with the sound of the entire room.
Really?
So that video that you showed, I was laying on the ground in that little 6-foot circle filming.
Yeah.
And you were correct. Those 2 instruments were instruments that I built. And it should be noted that the 2 guys playing them are really phenomenal musicians who play handpans. One is Sylvan Paisler, and the other one is Josh Rivera. Josh has since gone on to become a great crafter of the instruments.
Really?
Yeah, so he makes his own instruments now. And so that video is a really special snapshot in time for me. That was filmed in, I think, 2015. And I had spent the previous fall kind of in secret building a line of instruments that I was going to premiere at this festival. And so I did it kind of top secret. I think the night before I had premiered this line of instruments, and then to take them to a sound space like the Integratron and get to hear them played, also played by really phenomenal musicians, real sweet spot memory for me.
Yeah, it's super cool. I just, I want to go to the Integratron now. I'm going to book it sometime. Maybe I can go sometime when there are people playing handpans. So, okay, so now I want to clear up the idea of hang drum, handpan. Why do some people call it a hang drum? Other people call it a handpan. Which is correct?
Great question. This is a big question. So a little bit of history. The original one was invented in Switzerland in the year 2000, and their trademark name is spelled H-A-N-G, pronounced Hong in their local Swiss German dialect, and it means either hand or like slope, like a hill. And so that's the name, is Hong.
And that was a brand name. Is that a brand name?
It's a brand name, a trademark brand name of the original version of this instrument. Later on, this kind of umbrella term was created, which is handpan. Hand because you play it with your hands. Pan because it is a relative of the steel pan from Trinidad. And so it's kind of an homage, a tip of the hat to them, because this instrument wouldn't exist without all the work that they've done on their instruments. So handpan is kind of the generic term that gets thrown around. And you had said that answers hung or hang. That answers handpan, but we'll answer drum at the same time. So we try not to refer to them as drums, mainly because we don't want you to drum on it. They require such a gentle touch. They're delicate instruments. So if you play it as if you were playing a djembe or a conga, the results could be detrimental to the instrument's well-being.
They go out of tune, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of akin to a piano. We say, if you have an instrument that is a healthy instrument and was made well and is in good standing, we usually say, let's see it in 18 months or 2 years. Tuning is really complicated, and there's a bunch of variables that are involved. One of them is compressive tension, as if the metal's been kind of pushed down. Compressive tension will just release over time, and that's part of what can cause these instruments to drift. Also, if you play it like a drum, that'll also increase its likelihood of going out of tune
If you play it
quicker.
like a drum. Okay, let me ask you about that. So what's the difference between playing it like a drum and playing it properly?
It's really probably just the amount of pressure that you're striking it with. They're really, really sensitive, so they don't require much energy input. And they definitely have like a strike limit where you can overstrike it, and that's bad for the instrument.
And you just hit it with your hand or the palm of your hand or the tips of your fingers?
It's a little bit different for everyone. There's not a lot of rules about that. We usually say, do what feels natural. I tend to use most of my fingers. I figure like I've got 10 of them, I might as well try to use them.
Yeah.
I have a friend in France who plays with finger, thumb on this hand, and then just thumb on this hand. It's what came natural, and it really has defined his style over time. So, fingers and thumbs tend to be the answer.
Wow. So the thing that I'm wondering about too is does it have a scale like a piano? Like, are there notes all the way up the piano? Are there 8 octaves? I don't know. Does it follow any of those rules?
Yeah, it follows some of those rules. One purpose of the instrument is that it's simple, but for a good reason. It's unlike the piano or a guitar where you have all the notes and you have to know what chord to play, where to put your fingers. We eliminate a lot of that by picking select notes to create a certain scale, or refer to them as sound models. So they absolutely are notes you'd find on the piano, white notes, black notes, all of that, but it's usually one set selection of those notes or a certain mode. So you could have something that's in D minor, so that's a specific scale, but it might be only 6 of those 7 notes in the scale in a certain arrangement. And this is kind of one of the most fun things about them, because you can pick up one and you'll be in this really melancholy, dark world, and it's kind of sad. And you can pick up the next one, and it might be just unicorns and rainbows, just because of the different notes that are chosen.
Yeah.
And that's often what keeps people coming back, is they might have that really deep and dark, mysterious one, but they don't always want to evoke that feeling. So they may want one that's a little bit brighter or happier as well.
Okay, so you started out playing the cello, is that right?
Yeah, that was my gateway drug. So I like to say. It was my first kind of serious instrument. Yeah.
And why the cello? Were you a big Yo-Yo Ma fan or something?
No, I was just big. In 4th grade, they went down the line and they're like, "Well, that's a pretty big one. I bet he can handle it."
You're like 6'4" or something like that. How tall are you?
6'5".
6'5". Wow.
Every bit of 6'5". Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So that's what brought you to the cello. And why did you switch to the handpan, or what happened?
So I started playing cello when I was in 4th grade and took that all the way through high school. I was kind of on the track where I was, in junior high, I was playing in high school orchestras. In high school, I was playing in college and professional orchestras. And it kind of started to take it out of the fun zone. And so I kind of cycled off music as I went to college and didn't pursue music in college at all. And then I kind of got into more worldly instruments, world music, and that kind of spun off to me finding the original one, the hung, and that was in 2007.
2007 is when you first saw your first hung drum.
Yeah.
I'm like scared to say hang drum. You saw your hung pan.
Yeah. And so back then they were really hard to get because there was high demand and low quantity. And it started in Europe and kind of grassroots fed out of there. So I didn't actually get to play one until 2009. And when I did, it was the immediate of like, oh, so this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, you really got that.
Like crystal clear. Totally clear. And then I just played them first just for myself as like a personal hobby. And then it kind of got to the point where there were opportunities to perform, getting pulled into recording studios. I did some projects abroad with it. And then that slowly cycled into me getting more interested in, like, how do they work? Why do they work this way? And specifically, how do you tune them? At that time, in around 2012, there were really two people in the world that at that time I would have trusted to tune my instruments.
Really?
There was one here in the States and then one in Russia. And so they kind of each were in charge of a hemisphere in terms of retuning, which, is a massive responsibility. So
Yeah.
I saw an opportunity both to offer a service to the greater community, that we just needed more tuners.
Yeah.
And it was also, this very kind of interesting and fascinating. It's like a mix of physics and black magic.
So you started with tuning them, and then eventually you were like, I want to make these things. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was, the concept of trying to make them was such a Mount Everest concept that I decided to not say it out loud yet. I thought, let's just see if I can figure out to tune.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do that, that'll be, I'll be halfway up the mountain to the main goal. And yeah, so I spent about a year in a room by myself, just figuring it out. A really hard 6 months to kind of get the very, very basics. Yeah. And then another really intensive 6 months to kind of, get kind of to that first professional level of being able to be a retuner.
But not only that, you then started making them, and then you came up with your own process that they never thought of. Is that right?
That's about right. So the ones that you heard in the video at the Integratron, those ones I made 100% by hand. So I used air hammers, pneumatic hammers, hand hammers, and I did 50 of those over 2 years to really hone in on the kind of the basics and the roots of the art form. And then at some point, my right shoulder said, there must be a better way to do this. And I had kind of been given this concept. Someone said, like, hey, you should look into hydroforming and see if you could hydroform these. And so that set me off on this kind of big year-long journey to develop and adopt a hydroforming process for taking the flat sheet of metal and forming the initial shell shape. And so I did that kind of in secret for a year. It was kind of my skunk works project, I didn't tell anyone about it. I just developed it by myself, and kind of realized, like, okay, this seems like a big deal.
Yeah.
It's really effective. It's really efficient. It's really cost efficient. It's not that hard to make. And so I had to decide what to do with it, and I opted to open source it. So in 2016, I took my the plans for the machine, the CAD files. I did probably a 20 or 30 minute YouTube video of how it all works and the process to run it. And then I also in 2016 gave a 30-minute talk at a big event in North Carolina. And you can see that video, and you can watch my year in review of making this machine. And then I just gave it away.
You did? You gave it away?
100% gave it away. And haven't regretted it for a minute. What was great is, in terms of open sourcing, it worked. People took my concept and they went and made it better, and then they reset it back into the system. I like to say now, I think my original machine and design was kind of like 90% there. I'm not a formal engineer, so I hit some roadblocks that I couldn't solve, and other people grabbed it and made improvements and gave it back to us. So it's been amazing to kind of see an idea and a concept wrap its way around the world a few times. I think the last count was maybe there's 80 of these machines around the world.
80?
Yeah, I've got to see them too. I saw one in England, in Bristol. I saw one in China. I saw one in Tokyo. I've seen some here in the States. And it's been really interesting because there's been roadblocks that people have hit just because of their location. One example is guys in Israel, they couldn't get plates that were thick enough. So we had to come up with a way to use two plates and weld them together to make a machine that was going to be robust enough to handle the pressures. And they found success that way. So it's been a fascinating thing to kind of watch over the last 6 years.
We have a comment from Loretta here. She said, amazing generosity on your part. And it was an amazing display of generosity.
Yeah, it was a unique opportunity for me. I have been very fortunate to get so much from this art form. I feel so lucky to have found it. I felt I was really privileged to be in the position where I actually had something I could give back. It was also an opportunity to kind of remind our community we have a choice of how we can act, and I'm going to use my action as an example of this is how I'm choosing to act, and I will encourage you to do the same. So. Yeah, it was a great thing, and I'm really glad that that's the way it went.
So speaking of that, apparently there's some controversy going on in the handpan industry, that there's some kind of a lawsuit going on. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, there is. This kind of started in the middle of the summer of 2020. It has to do with copyright law. There was this weird case that happened in Belgium, and it had to do with a bicycle company. And the basic shakedown is the ruling was that the bicycle company had some functional features of their bicycle that the court agreed could be protected under their copyright, which is a new type of decision. Copyright tends to do with like the physical aesthetics of it and not so much with the functional. And because of this decision, this has kind of snowballed some things in the greater handpan community. The original creators have a copyright, and now that the goalpost has kind of been moved in regards to copyright stuff in Europe, they are pursuing legal action because they believe that people are now on the wrong side of their copyright. So that's the kind of start of it. What has happened has actually been quite fascinating. This legal action that they took was originally in Germany. It has completely unified and galvanized the entire international handpan community in this really wonderful way. Essentially what happened is there was 10 of us, I'm one of them, who formed an international nonprofit called Handpan Community United, or HCU. And we had like a 6-week window before there was going to be some legal stuff happening again. So we formed this nonprofit. We hired a law firm that specializes in copyright law, and we formed a website, got a Facebook group, ran a GoFundMe, and the last I checked, I think we have raised 136,000 euros.
Wow.
So it's a real deal.
But
thing.
It costs more than that, even apparently, to litigate that, huh?
Yeah, our lawyers had kind of said expect 5 years and 500,000 euros. So we're 6 months in. It has been really intense, and it has been like pretty high pressure cooker type scenario. The good news is for those of us who are on the side of HCU, it's working. We're doing the work, and it is. The reality is this is going to go on for a long time. The unfortunate part is that we have tried to do the non-legal route, and it has not been entertained at all. So we have been put in a position where it's like, okay, I guess we have to do the legal route, which is it's unfortunate. But in the very beginning of all this, it felt like in Lord of the Rings when the 10 people sat down and decided that they were going to take the ring to Mordor. We had that meeting, and you kind of looked around, and you're like, wow, okay, everybody's here. They're all here, and we decided, yes, this is worth fighting for, and yes, we are willing to be the ones who, pick the fight. But with that said, we've had unbelievable support from the greater community, from all kinds of makers and builders, musicians, performers.
Where can people go if they want to donate?
The website is hcu.global. hcu.global. There's also some really fascinating reads if you want to learn about the deep history of this art form. There are some really interesting legal documents that have been created that you can go read. We have newsletters that we put out. For the record, I am the official spokesperson, except for in Germany because I don't speak German. We have a guy that takes Germany over for me, but I am the person who does the talking on the public face. But there are a bunch of people behind the scenes who are very involved, and I'm kind of just the tip of the spear, if you will. Yeah, so that's hcu.global. You can read it if you want to donate and support this cause. We'd appreciate it. Every donation means that we get to keep marching forward, and that's the kind of support we need right now.
That's great. Isn't that incredible, though, how you're doing something that is so healing and so beautiful and makes people feel good, and then you're hit with something that is just completely counter to that?
Yeah, and I think that's the whole reason where we said, like, we will take this on behalf of everyone else because it's worth it. You know, everything that you just said is very true, and that's everything that we want to protect.
Who are some of your gurus? I know there's somebody in Switzerland, that is like one of the, I don't know if he's the Hong inventor. Is that a person that's a guru to you?
Yeah, there was a few people that I kind of came up under who I still hold in really high regard and a great deal of respect. We go back to talking about the tuners. I mentioned that there were kind of two tuners at the time. One of the guys is his name is Kyle Cox, and he runs a company called Pantheon Steel. They're in just south of St. Louis. Our storyline is kind of interesting and intertwined. He made my very first handpan for me that I got in 2010. And then fast forward, he was one of the first people to adopt my hydroforming technique. So that's been a really, really interesting kind of...
He adopted your technique.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
And along the way, he's been a great supporter of me. And there was a point where he handed the retuning torch to me. He said, "Okay, you're the new guy." And then when I was kind of finishing up my first year of learning to tune, I visited another maker in Switzerland. His name is Izan, and he makes an instrument that's called the Azachan. That's his name for his brand. And he was kind enough to kind of let me come and visit and shadow him a bit before I really kind of jumped in with both feet. So I give those guys a lot of credit.
Go over here. Here's a Halo Handpan. They have a video in 129 seconds showing how they make them.
That's the hydroformer. That's it, hydroforming right there.
That's it right there.
Yeah, and that probably happens in about a minute. Yeah, I know it's sped up, but it's about a 60
in a minute?
Process. Yeah, it's really, well, it depends how fast your pump is.
Wow.
These guys are kind of like the NASA of our industry. They're really tech, really, really tech. This is the machine that they have that's called the Kylomatic. So right now it's drawing out. This is this incredibly complicated machine. It's a 6-axis CNC. So now they're gonna put some dimples in. And this is the biggest part, this is their shaping machine. Same machine, but it's using a roller, and now he's prepping the shell in the kiln. It's gonna get colored. There it is coming out of the kiln. There's Kyle, and that's him tuning. Wow. You can see the tuning software he's using right there. That was invented by bodies. Okay, they're gluing. Yeah, so the instruments are glued together, and gluing has a really massive impact on the final sound. So everyone kind of has their own glue and technique, and how many clamps, what's the humidity in the room.
What was the thing that you said about you have to take it and it has to, something about nitrogen? Is this
yeah.
What is
this
that?
Is a great question.
Yeah.
They didn't show it here, but they did show the shell before and after. So what happens, depending on how you make your shell, has a big impact on whether or not you need to do this process. So if you take a piece of metal and you work it by hand, depending on the type of metal, when it gets to its final shell shape, it will be inherently hard enough that it can handle the compressive tensions that we use in tuning. Because as you hammer it, it's called work hardening. Yeah. Every little hammer strike causes microscopic friction that heats and cools and heats and cools. And that microscopic heating and cooling across the whole shell as it's shaped means when it arrives in its shape, it's hard enough. Now, if you do hydroforming, when it arrives in its final shape, it's not as inherently hard because it hasn't been work hardened in the same way the hammer shell has, which means it's this perfect shape, but it's not quite hard enough to use. So one workaround for that is you can do something called gas nitriding. And what that is this doesn't happen here at my shop. This is this big industrial process. Yeah. The shells get put in a furnace, and they pump the furnace full of pure ammonia, so NH3. And then what they do is they bring the temperature up in the furnace to the point that the pure ammonia breaks apart or disassociates. Yeah. So then you end up with nitrogen, and then you also end up with free hydrogen. So
This is serious science.
Yeah, and then so what happens is nitrogen is one of those elements that doesn't like to be alone. It likes to be bonded together, and so it can't get in with the hydrogen. They vacuum. It's a vacuum furnace, so they purged out any other air that can be in there, and so it's looking for something to bond with, and it sees the carbon that is in the metal, and it bonds with the carbon. So the carbon's bigger, and it kind of has a lattice that happens inside the metal. And so the nitrogen is able to go in and fit right in that lattice. And so what that means, essentially what happens is it makes it harder by putting both a casing on the outside of the metal, and then also nitrogen gets kind of infused into the metal. It makes it resilient to corrosion or atmospheric elements, which will help with longevity of the instrument. And it also has a big impact on the timbre of the instrument, or like the overall sweetness or purity of the sound. Typically, gas nitriding is used for like tractor bolts. Think like industrial wear and tear. We need this part to last longer.
Yeah.
And so when guys like me come to these companies and they say, the timbre of this batch wasn't as sweet as the last batch.
Yeah.
We're speaking very different languages. So,
so
depending on how your shell is made,
yeah,
warrants whether or not you need a secondary process like gas nitride.
So you're one of the great makers of these things. So this is one of your videos. So when you make it, you don't go through the same sort of robotic process, do you?
In the past, I have. I have included CNC machines in the past. But what we're seeing here is this is an instrument that I've been working on since 2016. A production method, I should say, I've been working on since 2016. Yeah. And I actually just launched this brand of handpans this week.
Really? This week?
This week, since 2016 until this week, this has been this massive effort. So the instrument that you're looking at is made with a new process that hasn't been used before. I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but what it does is it renders a high quality instrument in a really consistent way. And what's been best about it is it's enabled me to bring the price of my instruments way down, which for some people might be counterintuitive. Like, why would you want to drive your price down? And it's because I want more people to play handpans.
Yeah, because I mean, right now it's like it's an investment. Costs like what it costs to like buy a high-end computer, So like if you don't know whether you're going to be like a master of the handpan, it's kind of a steep gradient, as far as the price goes.
We usually say the average price range right now for a quality instrument is anywhere from $2,000 up to $3,500. So this one, the Zenith, which premiered this week, sells at introductory price of $1,000.
It's a lot less, yeah.
It's a lot less, and what's great is the quality has not been compromised. This new method that I'm using has enabled me, to keep the quality high while being able to bring the price down. It's really hard to make these instruments.
Yeah, it seems like it.
And part of it, the reason is the price is high is because it takes a long time and they're really hard and labor intensive. So it's really hard to make a good instrument, and you have to sell it at a high price. It's really, really hard to make a good instrument and be able to sell it at a low price. So that's been an interesting
something about though investing in an instrument. So if you make things too inexpensive, people won't value them as much as they need to be. Like an instrument like this, you really need to kind of value it in order to become good at it and really come up with a beautiful sound. I'm sure there's an investment of time in just learning how to hit the thing originally. Yeah.
There is. I would say the learning curve, though, is pretty short. I've seen people come in and figure it out in 5 minutes.
Really?
It takes a little bit just to figure out the touch. Yeah. We say the touch, the correct touch is like you're trying to touch a hot skillet. It's just a light touch. You want to just see if it's hot. The more advanced touch is the same, but you want to kind of flirt with the heat. You do have to impart some energy into the note or tone field to get it to vibrate. And the layout, it makes it really simplistic. It's right, left, right, left, right, left to go up and down the scale. And again, you don't have to think too much about which notes, what keys. We do that for you in designing the scale, the sound model. So a lot of the big problems and learning curve related problems are solved right out of the gates.
Do you, is that a clock behind you? That's a handpan
It
clock?
is and if we're on here long enough, you're going to hear it chime. It does a
Oh, really?
handpan chime.
It does?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. That's great.
Yeah, if this whole handpan thing doesn't work out, I'll just keep making clocks.
All right, so we're going to move on now to, because I want to hear your story. I've got a crazy story from Colin here. So here we go. We're moving into the crazy story room. All right, so here we are. We are in the crazy story room. Today has a Japanese motif because the story has to do with Japan. So you're sort of an ambassador to the
Yeah,
handpan.
that's like a hat I like to wear, and I'm honored to get to wear, to be the handpan ambassador.
Okay, so tell me, you have gone abroad to talk about the handpan.
I enjoy telling this story. I really enjoyed living it. So this was spring of 2019. I did a 3-week tour in Asia. It was about 10 days in China. It was like a 5-day festival, all handpan stuff. So they flew in a bunch of us. When I say a bunch of us, people like me from Europe and performers, and we did performances. We did workshops. We had problems with the Chinese secret police. And so
you did? Why? Because they were like, why are you carrying flying saucers with you to Japan?
Yeah. So I was coming off of 2 weeks in China, and I was then to go to Tokyo and do a 3-night festival in Tokyo. And a lot of us that were in China then did the same thing and went to Tokyo. And so the preface of the story is that from where I was in China, which was Western China, I was in the Yunnan province. I flew to like a small flight within China, and then a 6-hour flight to South Korea, and then a weird layover overnight, and then a couple hours to Tokyo. And my instructions were get to the Tokyo airport, go find this other musician who's my friend. He was landing around the same time, and then we would traverse into the city to our hotel. I get off the plane, and you've already mentioned it, which is important. I'm 6'5", and I'm a big 6'5", and so you could imagine me in the Tokyo airport. I stand out, and so I literally I walk out of the gate. I'm like looking at my phone, trying to connect to Wi-Fi so I can find my friend. And at this point, I'm exhausted too. I'm just traveled out. All I want to do is go sleep, and I get bum rushed by a camera crew. And they rattle off a bunch of words in Japanese, which is a language that I don't understand and I don't speak. And then just a microphone is directly in my face. Fortunately, they had a translator there who she then said, what is going on? And it was, the general gist is this is this show called Why Did You Come to Japan? And they lay in wait in the airport.
They do?
That's where the show starts.
I love that.
And they essentially just look for interesting foreigners.
Yeah.
And they say, why are you here? What are you doing? And my friend hadn't landed yet. So I was like, all right, I'll play ball.
Yeah.
And so they asked me a couple questions. I said what I'm doing. I'm here for this event, and I'm a musician. I'll be performing.
So cool.
And they're like, oh, can we see one of the instruments?
Yeah.
And I had to say no because I didn't have any. How it worked is I flew to China with a couple. I performed on them, and then I sold them.
Yeah.
And before I had left, I had shipped a couple to Tokyo. And so I was then, part of my mission was I then had to go find the instruments that I had shipped to Tokyo, get them, and then do the event. And so at that point, my friend had landed, and I said, great, thank you very much. Here's my card. And they said, hey, could we follow you and film you for your whole trip? I said, no, thank you. In my head, I was like, this is not what I was picturing for my time in Tokyo.
Yeah.
But they gave me this flyer that was the logo of the show and the name of the show and a little blurb in English about the show. And so I took it and put it in my pocket, and off we went. We got to the hotel, and the young guys behind the counter, I took the flyer out and I said, do you guys know what this is? And they freaked out.
Really?
They're like, this is a huge show. And I was like, really? Yeah, they pulled up YouTube videos that had millions of views, that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay.
Great.
And so what I did then is I emailed the people who were putting on the festival. And and kind of said, "Hey, I got this thing," and they also were like, "This is a big
have to
show.
do this.
It's like Monday night prime time,
Really?
7 Monday night on the big channel." And so that's when I was like, "Okay, let's talk. Would this be good for the festival? Could this be good for the genre and the instrument? Could I be the ambassador wearing the hat where I could introduce an entire country to this thing that I'm so passionate about?" And so I called him back and said, "Okay, let's do it." So from that point on, the next 4 days, I had a camera crew with me, pretty much from sun up to sundown.
Really?
It's an amazing feeling when someone puts a lapel mic on you. I told my wife when I got back, I said, if you ever see me feeling down about myself or having a bad day, just come clip a lapel mic on me, and I'm going to feel so good about myself.
That's funny.
Yeah, so we went through 4 days of filming, and what I realized is their style of journalism for the show is very hands off. They essentially just want to observe you in the wild. Which in my mind, I was like, great, I am now the director of this show. You will follow me anywhere I go and do anything I do. So then the goal was like, okay, we're going to go to my friend's studio and visit him. These are all friends of mine who are Japanese, which by default, they don't get on the show because it's not why are you Japanese or why do you live in Japan? It's why did you come to Japan? So it was an opportunity to get these guys on national TV and kind of, blow up the festival for them. Introduce this country of Japan, nationally to this instrument that I love and I make. And that's the story. So when I got back, it kind of went radio silence. That filmed in April, and then it premiered like early January of 2020. So months later. And so you can watch my episode. You can find it on my website. 4 days of filming was edited down into 15 minutes. So the first time I watched it was grimacing through one eye, and because it could have just been me, it could have been 15 minutes of me just eating sushi incorrectly. It could have been 15 minutes of me hitting my head on things in Japan.
Right, they could do anything with that footage.
They could do anything, and so
you probably signed
that
they could do anything.
I did. And so
Matt Wright says something here that's really cool. He says, a quote this week from one of my favorite authors, James Clear. "You can attract luck simply by sharing your work publicly."
Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
That seems very applicable. So
I like that.
What I will say is that I was very pleased with the edit of my my Japanese TV show. I will say that everything that happened that they show, it was as it happened. It wasn't contrived or anything like that.
And people can see it. Well, I'm just going to show a short clip of it. Just to see if I can get away with it. Hold on. I got it here. Let's see this thing. I mean, it's a very different kind of show. It's not like...
I think it's a very Japanese show.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. This is me totally dumbfounded.
Yeah.
So tired.
California.
Why did you come to Japan?
I play this instrument. Yeah. It's called Handpan. You play music.
I like the little guys in the corner. They're like me.
Yeah. They're comedians.
Looks like a UFO.
Oh my God, it's like my show in Japan. But they get, this is so cool.
And then when people play it, it's visually really nice. It's like their hands
So
are dancing.
they had no idea. They just saw you. They were like, there's an interesting
It's
6'5" American.
Yeah, carbon steel.
So we kind of became friendly by the end of it. And so I asked them, like,
Yeah. Oh my God, this is great. I better not show too much of it because I'll probably get in trouble. But that is super fun.
Yeah. It's like the bucket list thing I didn't know I had until I did it.
Yeah. I'm gonna fly to Japan just to be on that show. Hang out in the airport.
Like flying in.
I'll wear like a big, I don't know, purple hat or something. So they're like, this guy.
That might do it.
Oh my goodness. All right. We're coming to the end of the show here. This has been just an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Colin. And thank you for being so, so generous with your work, and so generous with sharing and jumping into the show and just having a good old time. I really feel fortunate to have met you.
Well, thank you. No, it's my pleasure. And I joked with you earlier that anytime anyone is willing to engage me on the thing that I am most passionate about, I will just talk your ear off. So thank you for the opportunity to engage.
I love it. All right, we're going to move on to the dance break. It's his duo called Dimples. And dimples are the things on the handpan, right? I'm right? Yep. And then, and we're just going to go in there. So Colin's not going to be dancing in the dance break. He is going to be playing. And so let's see what some of our chat people said before we move into this. Hilarious that the little dudes in the lower left and right are pointing and laughing. Do you ever get a translation of what they're saying? Yeah, do you have a translation?
I did actually. Maybe a month later, I found through a friend, I found a local woman here who speaks Japanese, and we went over to her house and we watched with her, and she translated. And that was kind of the mystery. It was like, I don't know what they're actually saying. It was great. It was actually really complimentary and encouraging, and they were mostly just like curious and inquisitive. So that was, I did get it translated. It was killing me not to know.
We're getting thank yous from everybody who's been watching. And I must dance, so I will make sure that I dance during the handpan segment. Tattoo fascination. They were fascinated by your tattoo, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were like, what the heck? Is that a flying saucer? All right. So thank you, Colin. We're moving into the dance break. And so this is the segment of the show. You're still on. Sorry. You're still there. I just want to ask you the name of your the partner in your duo, Dimples.
Yeah, we perform as the Dimples, which is, like you said, is kind of a joke because the instruments have dimples. My partner, her name is Judith Lerner.
Yeah.
We are like a unexpected pair. I'm 35, she's 69. But
she looks so young. Maybe
we live in. Yeah, she ended up. She hit me up. I moved up to Sonoma County, and she found me.
Yeah.
And we kind of have a similar music background. We both were raised playing classical music, so we kind of think in the same kind of brain of music. So we just meshed really well. And so we have an album that we recorded. And what's interesting about the album is it was the period of time where I was doing tons of retuning. So people were shipping instruments to me.
Yeah.
And so every track in here in the CD was with instruments that were from all over the world. One pairing I remember one was from Maine and one was from Australia, and they were perfect together. And the problem is those instruments will never be in the same room again. So this whole thing is just kind of a snapshot in time. That's why we called it Shop Sessions. And so all the tracks are just single takes of us just jamming.
That's cool. All right, so we're going to go on in, and I thank you again for being on the show.
My pleasure.
If anybody wants to know about Colin, you can go to his YouTube channel, which is Zenith Handpans. Is that what it is? You can go to his website, zenithhandpans.com. And anything else that you want me to tell them?
No, I think we did a good smattering of history, current events, my story. I think we've got enough. But thank you for the opportunity.
It was a perfect show. It was a perfect show, I think.
Seamless.
Some
would say it was seamless.
All right, I'll see you later.
All right, take care.
I don't know how I dance to this, but it's danceable. It's so mellow, though. I just might lay on the floor. Sway. I'll sway. So beautiful. Use your hips. Sounds of nature, yeah. Totally. Wavy dance. I'll do the wavy dance. Okay, lay on the floor. I'm gonna lay on the floor.